Hey guys, how's it going? It's me Ralph here today with a tutorial on how to play Animenz's Kuusou Mesorogiwi. So let's get into it. First thing, please don't try to learn this by reading through the sheet music over and over and over because that's going to lead to frustration. Frustration is bad. Yeah. A better way to do it would be to learn it like a couple measures at a time. Personally, when I learned it like 2 beats at a time, so there's no shame in like, oh, I'm just gonna learn a small section for now and move on when it's all good. And when I'm practicing it, I'm going to be practicing it with the metronome ticking because the metronome is actually a good quantitative measure of how like my progress on the piece because speed is like probably the most technically challenging part of the piece. If it was very slow, it would be very easy. So the metronome is an indicator of speed, and an indicator of speed is an indicator of progress. So I can know just exactly how much progress I've made by using a metronome. Um, Other notes, notes. When there's repeated notes, for example, in the first measure it goes, so the B flat is repeated. So I'm gonna be using different fingers on that note. I'm going 4, 3. By using different fingers, I'm not gonna repeat fingers. And repeating fingers is a little bit more effort, and it's a little bit slower than using different fingers. For me, it's just a little bit easier than. A similar principle can be applied to octaves, especially fast octaves. For example, measure 44, it goes. So I have like the fast octave in the right hand. So going like 1/5 on every octave is a lot of effort. Instead, I'm still gonna use the 1, like the thumb on every octave, but the top note, I'm gonna use different fingers. So what I'm actually doing with the top notes. I'm going 5, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 5, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4. So that way, like, the top note isn't, it's, which is a little bit faster and a little bit less effort, which is good when speed is a technical challenge. Next thing, with jumps, so like measure 24 for example. But with the correct notes. When I'm practicing that slowly, I'm gonna be placing my fingers on the keys before playing it. So in practice, that would look something like this. So like the benefit of doing that is one, it gives me more control, and second, it forces me to play from the keys. What do I mean by like from the keys? So the first octave, so for example, if I'm playing it from the keys, like my fingers are resting on the keys before playing it, and I'm just using a little bit of arm to get the power. So as opposed to like coming from above, which creates a harsh tone. And when you're doing jumps, that like when you have to come from above to at least some degree, and you come like from above and go, it's gonna create an awful sound, which is kind of awful. Also, when doing jumps, I try to minimize my eye movement. So like, instead of watching just my right thumb, which would go, I would like make sure my eyes are staying within this octave, so between this F and that F. So I'll just like go through it, but only play the notes that I'm watching. So it would look something like this. So like I'm keeping my eyes within this range so that while my hands are jumping around, my eyes aren't, which makes it slightly easier. Because like your body will follow your eyes. That applies not only to piano, but like a lot of different things, especially in sports. So, like, I don't want my body to be jumping. I just want my hands to be jumping. And that just gives me more control over this passage. A similar principle can be applied to measure 63, where it goes... and so on. Other general notes, if there's like a fingering problem, like fingering you can't figure out, or like fingering where you don't think your fingering's very good, for me, when I had that problem, I would just look up Animenz's playing of this piece and then slow it down to like 0.25 playback speed and watch his fingers and see which fingers he was using. Okay, let's get into specific parts of the piece I want to talk about. So, starting with measure 15, where it goes... and so on. So if you look at let's look at measure 16. So if you look at the right hand part, it goes... so that's obviously going to be a better melody than the left hand part in measure 16, which goes... so as a result, I'm going to bring out my right hand more and keep my left hand a little bit more subdued. Like in the next measure, the opposite is true. The left hand is a better melody than the right hand, so... sounds a lot better than... so I'm going to bring out the left hand and keep the right hand quiet. And that changes again in the next measure and changes again in the next measure. So basically that's what I'm going to do for the voicing in that part. Next, measure 30, it goes... and so on. So not only can you practice it like with a metronome slowly and then speeding it up, you can also do it in chords, like take 4 notes and then put it into a chord and then the next 4 as a chord. So it would go... and so on. But you don't have to start with the first note. If you start with the second note and start there to form like 4 to make a chord, it would go... so it's... so... or if you start with like the third note, it would go... so in this case, the D is repeated, and I'm playing it with both index finger and middle finger. So when I play the chord, I'm going to play it with my index finger and keep my middle finger really close, so that it's prepared to strike it when my hand moves over a little bit. So like, it's like ready to strike. So by doing this chord practice, it helps with hand position and like getting your hand prepared for upcoming notes, rather than focusing on the notes that are like right there that you're about to play. It helps with speed. 46, the fast scales. That's just metronome. Next, measure 58, it goes... and so on. So for that part, if you have small hands, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. I recommend simplifying it so that you don't have to like stretch as hard, and because you might hurt yourself. Unless you can reach it. If you can reach it, try your best and try not to hurt yourself, because like the reaches is like, it's pretty tough actually. But like whatever you choose to do with this passage, you do not want to destroy the melody line. Like, your audience has to be able to clearly hear, well, you get the idea. So, do not destroy the melody line. And, like, in this passage, the absolute worst thing you can do is, like... I can't do it. But basically, don't like make the 16th notes too loud, so like your audience does not want to hear, because that sounds just awful. So to practice like bringing out the melody line and keeping the other parts quiet, I'll just demonstrate with the right hand. So play the melody line legato and everything else staccato. So that would look something like this. It's actually really, really hard. So do it slowly, but like once you can do that, just like playing the melody line legato and everything else quiet will be so much easier. So next passage I want to talk about measure 75, where you have the sextuplets in the right hand and quintuplets in the left hand. So yeah, that part. So when it's fast, it's going to be hard to tell whether the middle notes, like the notes between the beats, is actually rhythmic. So like if it's off, your audience won't be able to tell. So I would suggest focusing on just making sure that the note on the start of each beat, so in this case, making sure that's lined up, and then making sure that's lined up, and then this. Also, I would practice this with like hands separate, so I can kind of get a feel for the notes with individual hands, and I'm not worrying about like the order of the notes and making sure they're in the right place relative to each other. So yeah, make sure the notes on the start of each beat line up, and you should be pretty much good. 85, the octaves. Please don't go 5-1, 5-1, 5-1. Find some other fingering. Like for me, I go 3-1, 5-1, 5-1, 4-1, 3-1, 5-1, 4-1, 3-1. So it's kind of like the same thing as like here, except the octaves are broken up. It's still the same idea though, because 5-1, 5-1 is a little bit less steady. So unless you can't reach, well, okay, these are broken up notes, so not being able to reach isn't exactly as good of an excuse anymore, but if you can just do that, it's gonna make your hand a little bit steadier in those parts. Steadier equals better in fast parts, generally speaking. And the last thing, measure 87. For this part, keep your hand very close to the keys, or else the part where the second of each set of 3, so it's going to sound weird. So like it might go, if your hands aren't close to the keys, you might accidentally play it like, and that's kind of not ideal. So keep your hands close so that like when you press down, it's a lot harder to make it like not line up. And to practice like keeping hands close and also like making it line up properly, I would practice this slowly with like staccato, but still with my fingers really close to the key. So that looks like this. Slowly with a metronome. The idea is to make sure the notes are like distinct and they line up properly. And in this case, the staccato would come from like lifting your fingers as opposed to like arm or even wrist. Because like this part is supposed to be piano and your fingers need to be close. So like using your arm and wrist doesn't really quite fit here. Just one more thing, in measure 91, when I play it, I go. So I'm using both hands, and when I'm playing with the left hand, I'm preparing the notes in the right hand. When I'm playing the right hand, I'm preparing the notes in the left hand. So like I'm keeping my hand right over the keys I'm going to play. So I'm playing with the right hand now, so I'm going to move my left hand over to those keys. So when I'm playing with the left hand, I move my right hand over to prepare it. And that just helps with speed. It's faster if you prepare it. Yeah. That's pretty much everything I wanted to go over. Yeah. Okay, so if there was anything that was unclear in this video, or if there was something you wanted to ask about that I didn't talk about, please don't hesitate to comment in the questions below. Put the question in the comments below. Because if you have a question, probably someone else has the question, and then you can be everyone's hero by putting the question in the comments below. And yeah, good luck, have fun, try not to hurt yourself, and don't give up. This isn't nearly as bad as Unravel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.